So yeah, I was a OB nurse for about in the 80s, and then I didn't like what I was seeing. I was seeing way too much intervention and too many C-sections and inductions, and I had my own first two babies on the unit where I worked. Birth trauma that's a whole other discussion, but I needed to find there must be another way, right? There must be another way. And a friend of mine said, why don't you be a midwife? And I'm like, what's a midwife? We didn't have internet back then. This was in the 90s. But when I went to the library and read about it, I was like, I'm home, right? So then pregnant with my third, I applied to midwifery school, and it was just a whole new paradigm. I had my other two babies with midwives, night and day, very healing. And I've been practicing. If I could do it, I feel that anyone can do it because I was really scared. And I had to really feel viscerally that I could do it. So that I can help other people do it. And then so since 1995, I've been a midwife, helping thousands of families that have come my way, initially in hospitals and then birth center. And a large part of my practice has been at home, but I still do shifts in the hospital because I feel that, at least in my local hospital, I want to empower women in the hospital setting to have physiologic and empowering, beautiful births, no matter the setting. Right. So
Perfect.
that's what I've been doing. And I started online. My daughter put me online. She gave me the 101 on Instagram, and it just grew very big. And so now I have sort of a global following, and I have a books and courses and things like that. But I love sharing this and with everybody, not just in my private practice and in the hospital practice, but globally now.
Amazing. Well, we're very grateful to have you here. So the first question I have that someone messaged me actually on Instagram is, so we have chosen to give birth in a hospital setting. Do you have any tips for me to create a Zen space with all the bright lights and the beeping?
Right. So I could go into this question for an hour, right? But yeah, I mean that's exactly what I do. You really need to come prepared and prepare in advance. I have a course, but there's other courses that are as comprehensive as mine. You In addition to your yoga practice, preparing involves so much, right? What to expect, how to cope, how, it's also what team are you choosing, right? If you want to birth in a hospital, you definitely need an advocate, and I definitely would recommend a doula, especially if it's your first baby, because people come in and come out, and the lights are going to be on, and people just do things to you, right? So you need, like, I have also on my website like a free birth plan that you can get, which goes over like all the 50 different interventions that are just done to people. And you really it helps to write out and give your answers to these things, what you want to do before, not at the time. You want to have this discussion with hopefully your midwife, because you're more likely to have this with a midwife. There's different paradigms. Not all midwives are the same, but most obstetricians treat pregnancy and birth as a medical condition, a disaster waiting to happen, needing medical intervention, whereas midwifery school, we're taught that, and honors the fact that birth is a normal pregnancy and birth, and a healthy mom and baby are just normal functions of the body. It used to be, done at home, all over the world, right? It was just a normal process, a normal part of life. So the more you learn and embrace that it's a normal function of the body, and you want to preserve the physiologic process of birth. Once we start meddling, and everything in the hospital might seem innocuous, like we just need to start an IV. Like we just would rather you in the bed. You can't eat. like everything that you don't necessarily think about. Maybe, you need to wear a hospital gown, take off your clothes, be on the monitor. All these things seem innocuous, but they're all proven to increase more interventions, leading to more interventions, complications, and ultimately cesarean. So we want to protect that. So you really want to protect physiologic birth. Um, and hopefully choose a midwife, and a midwife that has a very high rate, you want to ask them, of vaginal birth, low rates of induction and cesarean. I mean, my cesarean rate's 5%. So I don't know, it's hard to find a hospital midwife maybe that has that, but at least 10% or less. Ask them, that, and then move in, right? So you want to pack a suitcase and bring all the things that make you, comfortable at home, in the hospital, whether that's Christmas, sort of the tea light ambiance, affirmations hanging, maybe electric candles, your own food, your own drink, your own clothes. Clothes that obviously is going to come off when you're going to birth your baby, but what you're going to wear in labor and afterwards. And I always say bring 3 playlists. So one would be the Zen music, the calm yoga music. But then sometimes we gotta, funk it up. We gotta move the hips, shake the hips, be up and dancing. It could be 3 in the morning. It could, it creates energy, working with gravity, moving the hip side to side, lunging, opening the pelvis in asymmetrical ways, and creating some energy and fun with like hip hop or funk, some kind of music that does that. And then we want to, sort of like you can dance like no one's watching, like Ina May says, tap into that inner monkey. You're just like so uninhibited. And then the other playlist would be the sensual, the R&B, sade, or any kind of that helps you feel sensual, sort of that slow dancing with your partner, the same energy that gets the baby in, gets the baby out.
I love
So
that.
those are, things you can do in the hospital setting. Also close the door and you put a sign on it. Like this is a sacred space of I want to have my sacred space or a quiet Zen space or whatever. So, people that should come in knock, right? And it's up to your partner or your doula to say whether they can come in or not. Now you have to understand in the hospital they are, and even in the home setting, right? I'm responsible for mom and baby. So I do have to listen to the heartbeat intermittently, which is equivalent to being on a monitor. The monitor, continuous electronic fetal monitoring, not only it has done nothing to improve baby outcome, decrease, oxygen deprivation, but what has done is increase rates of cesarean 5 or more times that. So you want intermittent monitoring, right?
Yes, this is so important, and I
So
love that
many
with my
things. You do
midwives.
not need an
Yeah.
IV. So, then and you might want to put on that little sign, only positive vibes, right? Because they can fear you into it. You don't want an IV. What if you hemorrhage? We need to get an IV line. So, if they're not going to, I mean, you have to realize it's your body, your baby, your birth. You have legal right, if you're in the United States of America, to have autonomy over your body. And if anyone comes in with, what we got to do, we got to give you some Pitocin because your contractions are spaced out and you're not contracting well, and we got to move this on, or we have to break your water, you know, you and your doula or your partner need to say, what, we need a minute. Unless there's an emergency, which often there's not. They just, are recommending an intervention. You have time to say, we need a minute to discuss this. Every intervention, what are the pros, what are the cons, and what happens when we do nothing? What are the alternatives, right?
Mhm.
And you have to have this discussion in pregnancy, because in labor you are, even though you're strong, your body knows what to do. It's the mind stuff that gets in the way, and doubt and fear and stress. It's contagious. So all it takes is one stressful nurse or doctor or midwife to come in, and it's it so that's why this yoga practice and breath work and prenatal yoga make it a regular practice so that you can tune it out and just come into your center. Not once a week yoga. I'm talking about, any kind of breath work or meditation to practice regularly, daily, so it becomes habitual. That's why I love hypnobirthing in adjunct let's say, to a comprehensive course like mine, or any other comprehensive course that prepares you for natural birth. I like not a hospital course. I like courses that prepare you for natural physiologic birth. Yes, if we need intervention, then if intervention is needed, then we need to, like, really needed, right? Um, then we need to embrace it, as but planning in advance is huge. But once you're in labor, you need to surrender. You don't want to be fighting with people, right? So you really have to have a team you trust and be so prepared in advance, so that when
Correct.
you're in it, you can let go. Because then it's so not in any of our control. Then we have to let go, let God, or let spirit, or whatever higher power that you can relate to. So I could go on, but this is a huge part of my course, and there might be other questions. I hope
Yeah.
that helps.
Who has a question? Let the chat come and ask Anne anything. I do have another one I can read out to you. Let me just. Oh,
And there was one that came written that in the email.
yes. Do you want
But
to say
well,
that
you
one
can
out
tell me the
loud?
question first. I'll have to see what would have.
Okay, perfect. So here's another one. Deep down, I'm very nervous about the words emergency C-section. Do you have any tips to stay calm and have a holistic birthing experience, even in a C-section situation, emergency or planned?
That's a huge part of my course as well. I love Pam England. She's a midwife.
Oh, I love her.
Yeah, she wrote Mind Over Labor, or what was it? Mind. And it's a mindfulness labor preparation. But every pregnant mom almost has a fear. So fear is normal. That was my fear going into my first baby. As an OB nurse on the unit that I worked, that was my fear. And what I've learned with, some in my many years of, because my first baby was an emergency C-section, so my fear happened, except I delivered vaginally in the emergency, in the operating room, because the assistant surgeon hadn't showed up for an hour, and I started pushing, and so I actually had my fear happen. So that's what led to the trauma. So I didn't know. I was only 24, right? But the older I get, and the more that I've had to deal with, I and what Pam England talks about is facing your fear. Okay, what if that happens? Like it's called your tiger, whatever it is. Moms will tell me, I'm afraid of hemorrhage. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of shoulder dystocia. I'm afraid I'm gonna, have my baby at home with nobody. Everyone has a fear, but that is, if you prepare in advance, there's two things. One is an actual emergency, and one is an unnecessary cesarean that they're trying to recommend. That baby's fine, and you had to have an emergency C-section when it really wasn't. And then how do you deal with that, right? So that's why it's so crucial to prepare in advance, because when you get into labor, you have to let go and surrender to spirit, to God, to the powers that be. You've hired a team, you have an advocate, you did your preparation. If an emergency happens, I mean, I am a spiritual person. I believe if an actual emergency happens, I am grateful that I'm in the hospital for the life-saving interventions that save me or my baby. You have to turn it into, then I'm grateful. Yeah, you might have some trauma, and I've helped people, heal with birth trauma, but sometimes emergencies happen, rare. In a healthy pregnancy, you have such a high rate, like the chances of, if a healthy mom is having a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby, the chances of having an emergency when no one is touching and interfering are so low, right? So low. But if you have one, we have to be grateful we have to get it. That's a spiritual practice, to know that everything that happens is happening for us, and is perfect, right? But that might take some time to process. I think the harder thing to deal with, which happens more commonly, is when they act like and tell you it's an emergency and it's not. So then interventions happen that were unnecessary, and then complications from that, or having to process a C-section for an emergency because the baby was in distress. This is the most common reason for unnecessary C-sections, is misreading the fetal heart rate tones. And then the baby comes out with a 9-9 Apgar screaming like no issue. So then that's another, thing to have to deal with, that was unnecessary. But even if it was unnecessary, it did happen to you. So then it was meant to happen to you, and we grow through what we go through. So when you're in it, you just, you have to just, you're going to face one moment at a time. You get a now clock. Every moment is now. And you're just dealing with each now, each breath, each contraction, each surge. And that's all you can do. Was it Mark Twain? He wasn't even a yogi, who said, all of my life was filled with the worst catastrophes, none of which ever happened. So our what ifing, right? It can make us scared, and fear and stress sort of, shut down labor and make us feel awful and suffer. So actually what he's saying is that his life was destroyed by what if thinking and worrying. So sometimes we can't always get rid of the worry. So what is courage? Facing the fear. Your fear is of having an emergency cesarean and doing it anyway. You just walk, you're going to find this strength in labor that you didn't know you had. And you're going to find that strength, and you stick to your breath, your tools. That's what we learn in yoga. We always come back to feeling ourself on the floor, our body, whatever's in contact with the floor. We just feel that aspect and focus on sensations of the body. And then when you're having labor, you're going to have a lot of sensations to focus, not fight, but dive into, like you do in yoga. Like if a stretch is intense, right? Yoga is going to be birth is going to be the most intense. You're actually stretching your cervix to open. It's going to feel like the most intense pain you've ever been through, but you can do it. We all do it. We've done it for thousands of years. When you're in labor, 300,000 women are in labor with you, and billions have given birth before you. So we find the strength to deal. It's the only time in life we have a healthy, intense sensation or pain, whatever you want to call it, it is, but we can do it. We've got this. And the way to deal with it is lean into it and dive into it, and then you birth, right? If you resist, it grows. So we have breath, we have body awareness, we have, your drishti, your meditation muscle of always, a steady focus, a steady gaze, and using those tools each moment.
Oh, I love that. All right. Anyone have any questions that are coming up? Please put them in our chat. You can ask Anne live. These are such good tips that she's saying. We can just all tell you've done this for so long. I love it. Anything coming up for you guys? I know everyone here is actually first-time moms.
There was a question that came in the email. I don't know if anyone has it, but they were questioning like about induction and.
Yeah, do you want to read that one out loud?
I have to go search in the email. I don't want to take away from your yoga time, but there was a question. Did you get that question?
Yeah, it was
both of us.
People often.
There was a question about induction. Why would I need it, and what's it like? So I don't remember the words, but first-time moms especially tend to carry their pregnancies longer, at least by a week or more. So I'd rather you be surprised and be early, but to expect to go at least a week past. A wonderful website is called evidencebasedbirth.com. And it's really compiling all the evidence of the research. And actually, we're finding that most reasons for induction are harmful. There's no study, there's no research to support the benefits. And it's especially a problem with first-time moms because, you're a few days past your due date, we got to schedule your induction, right? So you are allowed to say, I do not want to be induced for post dates if my baby's fine, right? And so I don't know if that was the reason. But evidence-based birth talks about all the different reasons, for example, that people are being induced night and day. We have such high rates of inductions in normal healthy pregnancy. It's insane. and it causes more harm than good. But let's say somebody has preeclampsia, like we really have a medical problem. It's a combination of things. It's a systemic disease where the mother has high blood pressure and other things going on with her kidney and liver. There's other, it's a systemic disease. Then we need to have an induction, right? So then we have to embrace, because now we have a complication, and the way to heal preeclampsia is birth, because it goes away postpartum, right? So then that becomes a question of how to embrace my induction and how to have, you know, almost like a home birth, like, or a natural physiologic sacred sort of birth, zen in the hospital, given that we have to have these interventions, which brings us back to embracing the intervention and working around it, right? But I don't know what, if you have that email, which specific reason it is for induction.
Yeah, I think she wrote me on Facebook and she said, I've noticed a lot of inductions are happening.
Same.
And yeah, that what do you
Especially before
recommend?
Christmas. Yeah, we have increased rates of induction before holidays.
Mm,
That's not a reason to have an induction, right?
mm,
Because induction, like if you're healthy and there's nothing wrong, like you want to, ask the provider, why are you recommending induction, right? If it's just that you're a week late, that's not a reason. If everything's fine, there's ways of monitoring the baby, right? So if though, they're saying, listen, it's our policy, you have to be induced by 42 weeks, you still have the legal right to decline it. Just know that. But we're not talking about a complication. If someone has cholestasis of pregnancy or preeclampsia, or there is a reason, then you can definitely start, like my Natural Birth Secrets book, second edition. You can get that on Amazon. I have natural remedies that you can do, that you could try. Right. See here that someone is asking membrane sweep. Yeah. So I'll get to that. But just know that if you're going to be admitted into the hospital, they give medications to cause a person to be in labor, and they don't always work, right? So you might be there a couple days before it even starts working, and there's risks. Same thing. Anybody want to tell you an intervention? You want to know what's the risk, what are the benefits, and what are the alternatives, or doing nothing, right? Really, that you don't want to be just, it's not having a glass of water to take an epidural or to take an induction. Sometimes those are vaginal medications, or medications you put in your mouth or under your tongue, or medications they give through the IV. And again, they stimulate contractions, or they might help ripen the cervix, but there are risks. Okay,
mm.
sometimes the risk of having a baby is less than the risk of having preeclampsia not taken care of, right? So sometimes we need to embrace these inductions. Membrane sweep. Well, again, this, like, to me, in a healthy pregnancy, we are not in control when the baby comes into this world. That's
Do you
determined
want,
by,
do you want me just to read the question? So the question is, what are your thoughts on membrane sweeps? I've heard a lot of people having that, and it's
yeah,
true.
well, like my sister, she calls me after my sister, when she had two of her babies at, an Ivy League institution, she says, why am I having contractions? They did some exam and now I'm having contractions. They didn't even tell her they were
Mm.
doing it. So, number one, there's no reason to have internal exams when you're not in labor. None. Unless you're like 42 weeks or 41 weeks, and you want to know, is your cervix starting to thin out, ripen, soften? It's not just about, the cervix is this long, right? About this long. And when it effaces, it thins out. So it shortens and thins out. So it becomes like paper thin. And then you might be a little dilated, might be a little open. This is the womb, right? So you might be a little open, and the cervix has to get soft and come forward. So there's different ways to ripen the cervix. And in my book, I talk about, sex and evening primrose oil, and there's a bunch of different things that you can do. Um, if the if you have, what I was trying to say is, you do not need an internal exam in your pregnancy. Unless, people say, I want to know. I've been having contractions on and off for a few weeks at night and then they go away. So someone will ask me, I want to know. All right, but you know what? I'm going to do an external exam right now, and it might mess with your head because what's it going to tell me? How's that going to change what we do? This person is not in labor. They're just on and off contracting, or maybe they're, past 41 weeks. So I have seen people with long, closed, thick cervix go into labor that night. Right. So if I told them you're long, closed, and thick, so nothing's happening yet. So they think, oh, I'm not ready. My body's not working. Right. It messes with your head. And what if I tell somebody, wow, you're almost fully effaced and, maybe you're 80% effaced, 20% of cervix is still there and you're about 4 centimeters dilated. So she's going to go home and think, wow, I'm in labor, but she could walk around like that for a few weeks. Right. So what's the point in having an internal exam? In labor, that's a different thing, right? Or let's say someone is getting really, anxious and nervous and going past their due date, past a week, and they want to start bringing things naturally. So then, yes, the membrane sweep, that is a choice. Don't let anyone do an exam or say, whether you want it or you don't want it, you might want an exam, but don't stimulate, don't sweep my membranes. But what is that? So let's say the cervix is open a little bit, right? I can fit, let's say 2 fingers. All right. So what is the membrane sweep? It's sort of like making my hand like a spatula, and I sort of sweep the bag of water away from its attachment to the lower uterine segment. So it's a little uncomfortable, but sometimes moms beg me, can you sweep my membranes? Because they just want to get things going. And if they really want that, I'll do it. It doesn't always work, right? Just like any even strongest induction medication in the hospital doesn't always work. We have to start again the next day or in a couple days. But sometimes it does. Sometimes I can put someone right into labor in 24 hours but what happens when you sort of loosen the attachment of the membrane, the bag of the double bag of amniotic fluid away from the lower uterine segment, it releases prostaglandins that can help you go into labor. I have put people into labor with that if they wanted that or if it was necessary, and I've also done it and it didn't work. So we have to do it maybe a few times. Not in our control, really, when babies come into the world.
Yeah. Man, this has been so good. So if you guys we're going to do yoga now, but if you are feeling like you want more time with Anne, she did post here that she has a Q&A coming up. It's on April 28th. For those of you just watching this video on YouTube, I'll post all the videos, resources to Anne so that you can find her 40 things to do before birth, all these free guides. She has lots of courses. Thank you so much, Anne. You are amazing. Absolutely. I'll send you this video too.